ETS2 is changing, and we can all see it. You don't even need to dig deep into blog posts to notice it. Just load up the game today and compare it to how it felt a few years ago. The lighting is different, the roads feel more detailed, the cities feel more alive. And the direction SCS is taking, it feels bigger than ever. The end result of all this work is going to be something much larger than what we originally started with. Euro Truck Simulator 2 is already one of the best truck simulation games out there. I genuinely believe that. I've played a lot of driving games, a lot of simulators, but ETS2 has something special. The atmosphere, the scale, the way it captures the feeling of long-distance trucking across Europe. It's in a class of its own. And now it's going to consoles. That alone changes everything. Console players are not just getting a simple port, they're going to get a more polished and more refined version of ETS2. And that's because SCS is clearly preparing the game for a wider audience. When you bring a simulation game to consoles, you can't afford rough edges. Performance has to be stable, maps have to feel modern, the experience has to feel cohesive. And that's where the big changes come in. SCS are rebuilding the map of ETS2, not small tweaks, not minor adjustments, a full-scale rebuild of some of the oldest regions in the game. And now, they have undertaken what might be the biggest rebuild project in the history of ETS2. And no, I'm not talking about Benelux, I'm talking about the United Kingdom. This is huge. The UK in ETS2 is one of the oldest parts of the base map. It was built when the game first launched, back when SCS didn't have the tools, the experience, or the scale they have now. The roads were simpler, the cities were smaller, the layout felt compressed, and now they've decided to redo it. But here's what makes this even more impressive. They didn't just assign a small team to quietly update a few roads. They've divided the rebuild into 3 separate teams. 3. That tells you everything about how serious this project is. Each team is responsible for a specific region, Southern England plus Wales, including cities like Liverpool and Sheffield. Then Northern England plus Southeast England. And finally, Scotland. When you hear that breakdown, you immediately realize how massive this undertaking is. They're not just replacing textures, they're restructuring entire regions. Let's start with Southern England and Wales. This area has some of the most recognizable routes in the UK. Busy motorways, industrial cities, ports, rolling countryside. The original version in ETS2 feels very simplified compared to modern DLC areas like Iberia or the West Balkans. So the focus here is clearly scale and detail. Better road layouts, more accurate interchanges, more realistic city entrances, more landmarks. When you drive through these areas after the rebuild, I expect it to feel closer to modern DLC quality than base game quality. And that's important. Because when new console players jump into ETS2 for the first time, they won't be thinking about which part of the map is old or new. They'll just expect consistency. SCS knows that. Now let's talk about Northern England and Southeast England. This region covers some densely populated and highly complex infrastructure. Think about the motorway network around major cities. Think about the tighter road systems, the mix of urban and rural. Rebuilding this area isn't simple. It requires careful planning. You can't just stretch roads and add a few new buildings. You have to rethink spacing. You have to improve junctions. You have to bring it in line with the current 1/19 scale while making it feel larger and more believable. And from what we've seen, that's exactly what they're doing. Scotland is where things get even more interesting. Scotland requires more work, and that makes sense. The current in-game Scotland feels very limited. Few cities, simplified layouts, large areas compressed heavily. Now SCS has the opportunity to expand that properly. They need to add more cities. They need to create more complex infrastructure. They need to represent the Highlands in a way that actually feels like Scotland. The terrain, the elevation, the long scenic routes. That's not a small adjustment. That's almost like building new DLC-level content. To be honest, this whole UK rebuild doesn't feel like a simple rework. It feels like an expansion. It genuinely feels like new map DLC content. The United Kingdom is very large in real life, and in the early days of ETS2, it simply couldn't be represented with the level of detail we expect today. Now, SCS has more experience, better tools, bigger teams. So instead of patching over the old version, they're rebuilding it almost from scratch. And I love that, because it shows long-term vision. They're not just thinking about the next update, they're thinking about the next 5 years of ETS2. And here's where the timing becomes interesting. There's strong speculation that an Isle of Ireland DLC could be released in 2027. Now, think about that logically. If Ireland is coming as a major expansion, it would make perfect sense to have the UK fully rebuilt before that release. You don't want a brand new, highly detailed Ireland DLC sitting next to an outdated UK map. The contrast would be too obvious. The immersion would break. So if Ireland is targeting 2027, then SCS realistically needs to finish the UK rebuild between now and then. That gives them roughly a year to 2 years, depending on internal scheduling, which explains why they split the rebuild into 3 teams. They're accelerating development. They're parallelizing work. They're treating this like a priority project. And honestly, that excites me. Because when I think about driving from a fully rebuilt London up through a detailed Manchester across a properly scaled Scotland and eventually into a brand new Ireland DLC, that feels like a next-generation ETS2 experience. This isn't just maintenance work. This is transformation. And remember, this is happening while they're still releasing new map expansions elsewhere in Europe. That means SCS is confident in their capacity. ETS2 today is not the same studio size as ETS2 in 2012. It's bigger, more structured, more ambitious, and bringing the game to consoles is another layer of motivation. Console players expect quality. They expect smooth performance. They expect polished visuals. And if ETS2 launches there with a rebuilt UK, modernized base map areas, and strong DLC support, it's going to make a powerful impression. I genuinely believe the console version will feel like the definitive edition of ETS2, not because PC is lacking, but because all this rebuilding work is happening at the same time. The timing isn't random, it's strategic. So when people ask, why rebuild the UK now? I think the answer is simple. Because the future of ETS2 is bigger than we think. It's not just about adding new countries anymore. It's about elevating the entire map to a consistent standard. And once the UK is complete, once Ireland potentially arrives, once the older regions are modernized, ETS2 will feel unified in a way it never has before. From Portugal to Poland, from Italy to Scotland, from mainland Europe across to Ireland. One consistent level of detail. That's the vision. And I have to say, I like where this is going. It feels ambitious. It feels confident. It feels like SCS is saying, we're not done, we're just getting started. If the UK rebuild delivers at the quality level we've seen in recent DLCs, it might completely change how we see the base map. And for long-time players like us, that's exciting. Because we've seen the journey, we remember the early days, and now we're watching the evolution. The next few years are going to be very important for ETS2. Between console expansion, major rebuilds, and potential new DLC regions, this could be the biggest growth phase the game has ever had.